Hi, good morning. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Partnership Facebook Live. I'm Julie Yerkes, and I am the Community Engagement Lead for the Partnership at Drug Free New Hampshire. Um, Thanks for joining our Facebook Live. And this is where we at the Partnership explore current prevention initiatives around the state, strategies that are happening with our prevention partners, topics of interest, and kind of really hit on the day-to-day pieces of prevention. And coming up, we have Drive. We're sitting here in the middle of January, in the middle of December. And, we're in that festive holiday season. We're thinking all the way back through, it's been a long fall and the days are getting darker. They're going to start getting lighter in just a few days here on the 21st. And here at the Partnership, we're looking ahead at Dry January, which is a time when, we've come, it's kind of grown. I remember people when I was younger doing it. When I was younger, I remember somebody being like, I do Dry January to confirm that I can take a break from drinking, right? So it's a way to kind of, so a lot of people do it. It's gotten more traction. There are people who really see the health benefits of taking sort of cleansing their system. So we're here to talk about that a little bit and some of the benefits and the challenges. And so I have my friend Judith here with us today, and I really appreciate you coming to join us. So this summer, I was at a gathering, right? And I think you were offered a drink, and you said, no, thanks. And then it kind of came out that you hadn't been drinking for a while, and that you had taken a break, and that you were still on that break from drinking. And so we wanted to invite you here to just talk about that, because this idea of taking a break from drinking can sound really exciting for some people, and then they get to it and it can be a challenge. Or they're like, why would I want to take a break from drinking? Like, right? And so we're just here. And I just want to preface this conversation with a couple of things. Number one, we are not medical professionals, right? We are having a conversation between two people about the ideas of alcohol use and taking a break from alcohol use. We are not medical professionals. If any behavior change is a big change in your body, you should talk to your medical provider. That can go from changing your diet to changing your exercise habits to changing your drinking habits. So what Judith's experience is, or other folks that we may mention, that is not everyone's experience, and the way that she approached it may not be the right way for you. So I want to preface it with that. And we are going to put resources in the chat for anyone who would like to, who is questioning their relationship with alcohol or other substances, to reach out to 211, and they can provide the proper level of support and direction to get that assistance. Okay? So that's the first one. The second one is that we are sharing a story, and then there's no judgment, right? This is a judgment-free zone. We don't always use language that is perfect, right? We try our best, right? And so I know I talked to Judith, and she's like, are these the right words? What are the right words? And so I thank you for being thoughtful about that and caring about person-centered language and how we talk about substance use disorder. And I just want to say, that we want to be able to tell the story and say, oops, or ouch, and be able to, still have a productive conversation, and not worry all the time that we're not doing it right. It's hard. It's easier when somebody's in the room and they can share how they're feeling about that. It's harder when we're recorded. And so I just want to, I just want to preface it by saying there may be awkward moments from either one of us. And we hope our listeners understand that we're here just in the best interest of sharing stories. Right. So thank you. Thank you, Judith. So enough from me. So, like I said, we were talking and you shared that you weren't drinking. And so I just want to ask, what led you to stop drinking?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for all of that setup and for creating this space where we're going to give each other grace. That makes these conversations a lot easier because there's definitely some vulnerability still in talking about personal experience always. So, you framed this as sort of around dry January, and I was thinking as you were talking, like, I didn't do this in January, but I just was reminded by thinking about the new year that I did start on the Jewish New Year, and that was very intentional. So, a lot of the motivations that bring people to dry January, right? Like coming off of a holiday season, starting a New Year's resolution, right? That piece did apply to me, that it was the Jewish New Year. And Jewish holidays have a ritual element of wine. That's like part of it. So it was kind of a big deal for me to be like, I'm not going to drink this wine. And so that was like the very first thing was that like I participated in the ritual, but without the alcohol. What got me there was uh, that I'd been feeling for a long time that the way I was drinking, which was completely within the realm of socially acceptable, professional, adult, functional, recreational use, was not feeling good to me. That it wasn't benefiting me. It sometimes felt like it was too much, that sort of like come home from a social gathering and have that like, oh, did I drink a little too much? Did I say something silly? That sort of like post-party anxiety that I think many people get. That was happening more than I wanted it to, even with reassurances from, my husband that that wasn't the case. How I was feeling about it was becoming more bothersome. And I'd been feeling that way for a long time, but I hadn't quite gotten to a spot of I'm going to change this because I was really, I think, caught up in a paradigm of what problematic drinking looked or sounded like, which came from my own childhood experiences of, extended family, media representations of what it looks like, all those things that inform how we think about stuff. And I didn't fit that picture, so I didn't feel like I had a problem. And yet at the same time, I didn't feel good about how much I was drinking. And so it took me quite a while to sort of get to the place of like, you know what? I don't need anything else to be true except that it doesn't feel good to me.
Right.
Right. That's it. That's the only bar is like I don't like how I feel around this. I don't like the way my thoughts are around this. I don't think it's serving me. So I'm not going to do this anymore. So that's sort of the mind game piece
Yeah.
around it that
Yeah.
got me to wanting to try stopping. And I had done some 30-day together with my husband. We had, a couple of Januaries where we were like, man, woo, we can do this. Like, let's do 30 days to prove we can do 30 days. Or we're going to kick off a new fitness thing. And part of that is like, we're going to cut the calories from alcohol, right? So we had
Yeah.
dieted from it a couple of times. What was different for me this time was that I didn't give myself an end date. I really just sort of posited it in my own mind as an experiment that each day one day at a time, no reference to the text you mentioned before we went live, but just that, famous idea of like everything starts with a single step. I'm going to do this one thing in this moment. What's the right choice? That's how I started. It was like, today I'm not going to drink. I'm going to see how it feels today. The next day, same thing. And I'm just going to keep thinking that way to sort of see how I feel. And there were phases of challenge and then feeling health benefits or psychological benefits. And I've not had anything to drink in 14 months. and felt good enough and continually felt better to the point that I'm not really interested in doing the experiment the other way yet.
Mhm.
Right. And I
Mhm.
haven't said I'm never drinking again. Actually, I was at a friend's wedding and they poured champagne and I took a glass and I had a sip and I tasted great, as I think champagne does. And then I was like, I'm good. So I felt like I got to participate in that toast. I didn't want to have the whole glass. I just sort of wanted to continue being in the space that I'm in. Um, and what that's allowed for me is a whole lot of other um, a lot of space for personal work and clarity around things that I probably had been quieting for a long time. Um, and again, nothing earth shattering or catastrophic or, like my marriage. I haven't changed my marriage or my children. Like I like my life than I did before. But from a very like personal, internal kind of space, I've just had some shifting perspectives on things.
Yeah. You say so many things that I want to follow up on.
Sorry.
No, no, no. But I think one of them is we hear, I've seen that a lot. I've seen that from people, and I hear that in these conversations. Um, well, they didn't, why aren't they drinking it? They don't have a problem, right? Right. And that there's sometimes this, like you said, that paradigm, that you would only stop drinking if had really interfered
Right.
with you. You would only seek help and if it had that impact on your life. And what you're saying is like it was a you thing and
Right.
not a other, right? And sometimes when and I think Nikki, you may put in our resources at the Partnership at Drug Free New Hampshire on our alcohol resource page. We have a whole bunch of resources, including sort of like a self survey, I guess, right? A self
Yeah.
screener, just to kind of be able to say, where am I with this and how am
Right.
I feeling about my own? It's a tool. It's actually a tool to help with you start that conversation with yourself. And probably people who are already kind of thinking about it would go to that tool. So I'm just curious. You said that there were some challenges, and I'm
Yeah.
curious if you could share what those were. And
Sure. Yeah. So I realized very quickly, like day 2 or 3, that I had my behavior was habitual enough that I felt the absence. So I'm making dinner, it's 5:15 or 5:30. My kids have been picked up from the bus. They're doing homework. I'm starting dinner. I'm in for the evening, glass of wine, right? And so the first few times that I was like making dinner at that hour, I was very aware that I was not having a glass of wine. And frankly, it scared me that I was so aware that it was such a present thought that that wasn't there, which motivated me to do another day and another day and another day without it because realizing how much space it was taking up in my brain was really scary. So there were a lot of firsts, like, okay, I'm going to book group, which I feel like is like so many folks in our circle would understand, like, oh, book group is maybe code for you didn't read the book, but it's a social opportunity. Maybe you did read the book, it's still a social opportunity. So it was like, okay, I'm going to book group and or I'm going to an event for my husband's job, or I'm going to a community social event, or we're going out to dinner. Each of these first I had to do like, what choice will I make? What will I say? Do I feel like I have to say anything?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I have no shame about this. There are definitely like big events that I've gone to where I've gone to the bar and been like, I want a glass of seltzer, but I want you to make it look like a gin and tonic. And I will tell you, I'm not the only one doing this because I have not had a single bartender look at me funny. They're all like, gotcha. And because if you order a tonic or a seltzer, you get it in like a soda glass. But if you
Right.
have them make it look like a cocktail, you get it in the other glass and you get the little stir and you get the lime, and then nobody asks you about it. And I feel no guilt about saying that there are times when I just don't want to have the conversation. Like, this is me and my experience. And I also don't always want to be the focus. But just making those choices was like one
Yeah.
of the challenges. So some of it was, a lot of it was being in contexts where it was just default. First friend's wedding we went to, first big holiday meal I hosted, things like that,
Yeah.
where the default would be just that everyone is drinking and I'm not, and I'm opting out. Related to that challenge is the challenge of telling people and not wanting to make them feel like you're judging them. So saying like, oh, I'm not drinking, I haven't been for a while. Lovely, thoughtful, dear friends often go, oh, I'm sorry, do you not want me to drink this, right? And the answer is like, no, no, I'm really okay, that's fine. Or oh, what, I've seen actually, and this is interesting about our peer group, Julie, and I don't assume that everyone listening is in our peer group, but around our circle, a lot of women have gone, oh, tell me more about how you got there. I've thought about this, or
Hmm.
I'm somewhere on this spectrum of wanting to cut back or thinking about this, right? So, as awkward as it sometimes is, it's also often been a gift, right? An opportunity to sort of share with other people and just be more authentic, right? So I don't always share, but when I do, I've mostly felt really, really good about sharing it. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
think,
that's where that's why you're here, is right? It kind of came out in that.
yeah, right. It came out
And
in our social setting that I was, yeah, yeah,
and I want to just connect that with some research
yeah,
and national research that um, our age, this age group of women, and I'm not going to get it correct right now because I should have looked at my notes ahead of time, but of parenting women during the pandemic saw the greatest increases
yep,
in alcohol use. And I think that that has been something at the partnership that we've wanted to explore is, what has that felt like for a group of, or individuals within that group that saw such a increase in alcohol use during this time, and how, if what, if any, support is needed or wanted if change is wanted, I guess,
yeah,
right? So if that is something that one has recognized in their own habits and behaviors that they want to see change, how do we support that? Because again, a lot of resources are geared, um, you know, and understandably so, to severe substance use disorder. And we do know that there are health challenges for um, higher use that may not be interfering so critically in one's life. So thank you for sharing this, because I think this is a topic we wanted to address at the partnership, is this demographic.
yeah,
Um, so having a plan of what to say, having
yep,
some backup strategies
yep,
as well. And, what if, and it sounds like you were comfortable enough saying to people, no, it's fine, you can have a drink. And you still participated in some of these
mm,
social activities. That may not be easy for everyone,
certainly
right?
not.
That takes a lot of willpower.
Yes,
I'm curious if you started creating any other type of social activities for
yeah.
yourself that were not some of those ones where alcohol was just kind of a part of it.
Yeah, great question. So two things. One, there were a couple of events where I called a friend in advance and like read them in to what I was doing, especially in
Uh-huh.
the early months. Because I started in mid-September, Rosh Hashanah, Jewish high holidays, which meant it was still pretty fresh for me going into Thanksgiving, Christmas, all the holiday parties, New Year's Eve. So those were really tough months. There were a lot of those firsts I'm talking about came in the middle of that jubilant season, right? And I didn't want it. So one strategy I used was I call a friend who already knew, who had already read in, or I'd say, "Hey, I haven't seen you. This is the journey that I'm on. If it comes up tonight, can you just help normalize, like, can you help normalize it? Can you help it not be the focus of the whole thing? Like, I didn't, you might want to know more about why I'm doing this, but like, I don't want to get into it with you in this context. So can like, I'm telling you, can we talk about it tomorrow over tea or whatever?" And very often that person would be like, "I'm going to get a club soda. Can I get you one?" And just sort of like join me in that. So I'm really, really fortunate. In addition to that, I started thinking about like all of our get togethers tend to be like, which is no shade on anyone, but like, come to the backyard, have a glass of wine or whatever. And I simultaneously like wanted to get healthier in a bunch of ways. So I started asking friends like, "Hey, is anyone free to go for a walk?" Right? Just sort of focusing like, "I want to catch up with you. Can we like let's go for a walk or can we get together for tea?" Like let's meet this weekend morning for a cup of tea or coffee. Just sort of shifting the timing of things sometimes, putting an activity in there, still low cost, low time commitment, right? I had this grand idea once that we'd all go take a yoga class together, but like that, which would still be so fun to do, but like logistically, that's not the thing. And you can't talk during that. So like
Right.
outdoor stuff, walking, yeah, just started trying to come up with those sorts of things. And I will also give some credit here. There are a lot more folks being voluntary sobriety. I feel like that's what it gets called in social media a
Mhm.
lot, right?
Mhm.
Not medically indicated necessarily. There's a lot of that right now from the millennials who
Mhm.
are like making, businesses with these mocktails and, alcohol-free parties. So, um, they've created this cool factor around it, at least in their generation. Our peer circle still very much came up in the mommy wine culture, so it's harder to rewrite that a little bit. But I think, yeah, looking for other activities, and this also takes some effort, being the person to invite folks out to those things, right?
Yeah.
Creating those opportunities that aren't centered around alcohol.
Yeah.
Um, is a
Yeah.
way to make that space happen.
Great. And I really like the low cost, low commitment, low time thing, right? Because I think about that, hey, that's such a common thing when you catch up with friends.
Right.
I guess something just popped in my head, like browsing at a book, just like browsing, not like
Yeah.
shopping, not let any, but like
Right.
that time to just browse and have something else be a topic
Yeah.
of conversation or keep
Window
you
shop with
busy.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
busy during it, the bookstore or like a fabric, like it's just
Yeah. Yeah.
thinking like other, look at me, I'm like, other, an active type of thing, even if you're not an active person, but to
Right.
not be sitting and having, because alcohol is often a social lubricant for
Right.
conversation. So like sitting down
Totally.
over tea might be a little too intimate for folks that aren't used to doing that.
Right.
But that moving around is a way to allow us to have a conversation and connect with people without the pressure of face to face so much. But this has been really helpful. Thank you for so much for sharing. We try to keep these a little bit on the short, 20,
Yeah.
25 minutes. So we're
Yeah.
at time. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Oh, just um that like anything, if you try once and don't do 30 days or 2 days, but it continues to sort of be a little voice in the back of your head, like don't ignore that. I would say. I feel like I sort of pushed my own voice away for a long time, waiting for some external indicator. And that one of the best things I've done for myself is to listen to that voice. And I hear it a lot more clearly since stopping drinking. I feel
Yeah.
like that was the beginning of my relationship with like really listening to myself and my own truth. And so I would just say, you know what feels good and right to you, and that you don't need anything else to tell you.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you for that. So we hope you've enjoyed hearing just about one person's journey through taking a break from alcohol, and it's turned out from more than a break to a longer. 14 months is over a year for those of you for me who doesn't always know my math, but so thank you for sharing that. Again, we just wanted to share that this, stopping like Judith did, like total cold turkey, it had become a habit for her. It had been, kind of a regular thing. Her body was used to it. She felt some, the habit withdrawal, but also maybe some physical stuff,
Mhm.
and was able to do it. But that is not a medically safe way for everyone to stop drinking alcohol. I'm putting, Nikki, the last link I put in is a link to some withdrawal symptoms, some minor symptoms of alcohol detox, which are, anxiety, sweating, nausea. But then there's some more serious ones, such as tremors or seizures and disorientation. So you want to check with your healthcare provider if you are going to do this, and or if you notice any of these symptoms, if you do try this on your own. So again, we are not medical professionals, so we want to make sure that if you explore this in your own life, that you do it safely. But thank you so much. Nikki's putting some resources, such as the Partnership of Drug-Free Alcohol page, where there are a lot of different resources there around talking to young people about alcohol use, developing your own healthier habits. We have, for our partners, we have an alcohol toolkit that Nikki will link to, and this is a social media toolkit where we can, and a Dry January toolkit where you can help us share information around Dry January and alcohol use, alcohol prevention. But thank you very much. Happy Friday, everyone. Happy holiday season. Enjoy the weekend, and be in touch if you need any resources or if you have anything that you'd like to share on a Facebook Live moving forward.